Welcome to part 2 of your online podcast for the end of year exam. This unit is Unit 6, Totalitarian Regimes. Let's go ahead and get started. As a reminder, you should already have answered the questions 1 through 8 for Unit 6. We're not going to go over the actual responses. If you got a response incorrect, please mark it incorrect, and then go ahead and correct your answers, whether that's your written explanation or the actual option A through D. Number 1. Which statement about the 14 points is not true? The answer is D. Stated that colonized lands should not have self-determination. If we remember back to Unit 1 on the growth of democracy, we learned that self-determination, this term right here, basically means freedom. Now, the 14 points we know was a document created by Woodrow Wilson at the end of World War I. It was a document where he hoped to provide freedom to everyone and equality and fairness. And therefore, D is the lie, because the 14 points stated that colonized lands should have self-determination. They should have freedom. So D is false because it should not have self-determination. That is not correct. That is not what Woodrow Wilson believed the colonized lands should receive after World War I. Let's take a look at number 2. Which statement about the Treaty of Versailles is not true? The answer is C. The United States signed and agreed to follow the Treaty of Versailles. If we remember during the Paris Peace Conference in which the Treaty of Versailles was created, we know that the Treaty of Versailles pretty much was written by the big three, Great Britain, France, and the United States. And we learned that the United States, even though the President, Woodrow Wilson, was on board with signing the treaty and was on board with becoming a part of the League of Nations, we learned that the President, although he is the head of the nation, does not have full say in what the country does. His power is limited by the checks and balance system that we learned about in Unit 1, and one of those checks and balance systems is the Senate. The Senate, which is one of the lawmaking bodies of the United States, a group of representatives who gets to create and pass laws, they have some power over the president, and they ultimately get to decide which treaties are signed. And when Woodrow Wilson comes back to the United States with the Treaty of Versailles completed and is basically asking the Senate to sign and approve this treaty, we know that the Senate refuses to sign this treaty. They're going to refuse to sign this treaty because they see that this treaty significantly limits the United States' future, power, and the Senate does not want to have the United States power limited. They want to be able to continue colonizing. They want to continue being able to focus on themselves and kind of be selfish when it comes to international politics. And so they will refuse to sign this treaty, and Woodrow Wilson will pretty much not be able to get them to sign. Let's take a look at number 3. Which statement about the U.S. Senate during the end of World War I is not true? I just kind of gave you some background info on the Senate, so hopefully if you got this question wrong already, you kind of already aware of that. The answer is A. The U.S. Constitution stated that they must accept a peace treaty handed to them by the President. From my previous explanation for number 2, we know this is false. The U.S. Constitution, this is the highest, biggest law of the land. This is a long, nice document that lists all the powers of the government, all the freedoms and rights of the people. And in this U.S. Constitution, it clearly states that the power to sign and enter treaty agreements lies with the Senate, not with the President. And so the U.S. Constitution does not force the Senate to sign any treaty handed down by the President. The Senate can, in fact, refuse. Let's take a look at number 4. Which statement about post-World War I Germany is not true? The answer is D. Germany was immediately allowed to join the League of Nations as stated in the Treaty of Versailles. That is a lie. If we remember back to the video notes that we took about the 1918 Paris Peace Conference, we know that at the end of this conference, Woodrow Wilson is kind of discussing and reviewing the major bullet points of the treaty. And one of the things that is outlined in the treaty is that Germany would not be allowed to join the League of Nations immediately after World War I. The League of Nations was kind of seen as a lucrative, club or organization that the winning countries would get to join. Remember, the League of Nations is this peacekeeping referee organization. And as a referee, the League of Nations would kind of be like Big Brother watching over all the other countries in the world. And so the big three, Britain, France, and the United States, they decide that this referee group is going to be exclusive, meaning that certain countries, specifically losing countries like Austria-Hungary, Germany, the Ottoman Empire, these nations as losers would not be able to join this kind of lucrative high-end referee club. But eventually down the line, they might be able to, just not right now. And so D is the lie. Germany was immediately allowed into the League of Nations, as stated in the Treaty of Versailles. That is not true. Let's take a look at number 4. Which statement about the Weimar Republic is not true? C. Came into power after Kaiser Wilhelm II was assassinated in a basement with his family. This is the lie. We know that World War I in Germany comes to an end because of lots of revolutions taking place in Germany. There were revolutions in the Ottoman Empire, which brought that part of the Central Powers out of the war. There was revolutions in Austria-Hungary, which brought that other Central Powers ally out of the war. And these revolutions within the Central Power countries eventually make their way to Germany. The Germans are angry. They want to get out of this war. They're going to start to revolt against the Kaiser, and he is going to have to abdicate, meaning step down. Now, when he does in fact step down from his power, he decides to flee. He flees Germany. He tries to go to Great Britain to seek asylum, to seek safety there. Remember, the British, the Soviets, and the Germans, their leaders are all cousins. And so the Kaiser tries to go to Great Britain and get some asylum there from his cousin, but he is turned away. He will eventually go to some other countries around the world to try to seek asylum. And one of these countries will finally take him in as a refugee. Therefore, he avoids assassination. If you placed C as the answer, you're probably thinking about the assassination that took place with Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. That leader was in fact assassinated in the basement with his family towards the end of World War I, but we're not talking about Tsar Nicholas II. We're talking about Kaiser Wilhelm II. He was not assassinated. He abdicated and then fled. Number 6. Which statement about the Weimar Republic's post-World War I actions is not true? Hopefully you remember that post means after. So we're looking at the actions of the Weimar Republic after World War I has ended. The answer is B. They added a Bill of Rights into their constitution in order to ensure that all people had to follow the government-created ideologies. Now, we know that the Weimar Republic is the democratic government created in Germany at the end of World War I. When Kaiser Wilhelm II abdicates and basically flees to go find safety, a new democratic government was created in Germany. And people were really excited about this democratic government because this was the first time that Germany had ever had a democracy. Before the Weimar Republic, all of the governments in Germany had pretty much been monarchies or dictatorships. Now, as a democratic government, the Weimar Republic created a constitution outlining the power of the government and outlining the protected rights of the people. And within this constitution, just like the American Constitution, the Germans also added a Bill of Rights, meaning a long, nice list which specifically states all of the rights and freedoms that the people are entitled to. So just like the United States created a constitution and Bill of Rights, so did the Germans. The interesting thing is that within this Bill of Rights, the Germans did something very unique that the Americans had not done. In this Bill of Rights, the Germans gave women the right to vote. This was actually the first country in the entire world, Germany was, to create a document, a Bill of Rights that stated women had the right to vote. All right, but let's get back to our answer. Why is B the lie? B says that the Bill of Rights basically required all of the people to follow the government-created rules. If we remember that a Bill of Rights is the document that protects the people, then we know that this is the lie because the Bill of Rights would never force the people to follow the government-created ideologies or rules. On the opposite, It's actually completely different. A Bill of Rights would protect people and allow people to go against the government-created ideologies. So B is the lie. The Bill of Rights did not require or did not force people to follow government-created ideas. It actually protects the people from government-created ideas and allows the people to go against these government-created ideas. Let's take a look at number 7. Which statement about totalitarian regimes is not true? The answer is D. The people have a monopoly over the ideologies created. If you remember, a totalitarian regime is another way of saying a dictatorship. And in a dictatorship, the people do not have the power. A monopoly, if we remember correctly, a monopoly is basically another way of saying total control. So D is the lie, because in a totalitarian regime, the people have total control over all of the ideas created? No, that's false. It's the government. In a totalitarian regime, the government has a monopoly. The government has total control over the ideologies created. So D is the lie. All right, let's take a look at number 8. Number 8 was a see-mean matter on a political cartoon dealing with Unit 6, totalitarian regimes. Let's go and see if you guys got this correct. All right, so for the C section, there were many things you could have written down, but here are kind of some of the big takeaways. First thing that we see is Uncle Sam, and we know from lots of experience in world history that Uncle Sam represents the United States. We also see a bridge, and this bridge basically is representing the European nations during the post-World War I era. So this is representing Belgium and France and England and Italy and all these other countries who are now trying to rebuild after World War I. The next big thing that we see, and you probably didn't jot this down because maybe you didn't know what a keystone is, but the next big thing we see is a keystone, and a keystone is actually a very important stone that usually goes in the center part of the bridge, and this stone is extremely important, its location here, because this is actually the one stone that usually takes all of the pressure and usually really sustains the bridge intact. So what does this political cartoon mean? If we take a look at this bridge really signifies the fact that all these European nations in the post-World War I era are going to have a hard time creating peace, because the League of Nations is barely holding it together since the United States is uninterested in joining all of the other League of Nations countries. So this bridge not only represents the post-World War I European countries, but it also represents the countries in the League of Nations which are going to struggle in maintaining this peace since the United States over here has refused to sign the Treaty of Versailles and has refused to join the League of Nations. Why does this political cartoon matter? The U.S. was vital to the success of the League of Nations. The fact that they didn't join is one of the major reasons the League of Nations failed to do anything in the post-World War I era that experienced the rise of totalitarian regimes. So without the United States really coming in to join this peacekeeping organization, right, they kind of sat on the side instead of coming in and really holding together this League of Nations, because they chose to kind of take a sideline role, we're going to see that Belgium, France, England, Italy, all the post-World War I nations in the League of Nations will not rise to the occasion. They will not be able to stop the rise of Hitler. Please notice that this question was a 3-part question. In order to get the question fully correct, you had to answer all 3 sections correctly. If you missed any one of these sections, you're going to automatically get question 8 wrong. That concludes our Unit 6 reflection on the 1 through 8 questions for Rise of Totalitarian Regimes. Please go ahead and add up your scores. How many did you get correct out of 8? If you got 8 to 7 correct, you're at an A, 6 to 5 is a B, 4 is a C, 3 to 2 is a D, and 1 to 0 is an F. If you scored a D or F, you should review all of your Unit 6 notes, as questions 1 through 8 really go over all of the main ideas, concepts, and vocabulary that you need to know for this unit. Again, if you got any questions incorrect, please make sure that you go back and make sure that you update your answers before you move on to section 7 of the test.